You are tuned in to the Week in Review, presented by the Prosper Group, where the right turns to win online.
Join us each week as we take a look at what is happening in digital advocacy and politics with a right of center focus.
Welcome back to the Prosper Group Week in Review podcast. Each week, we talk politics and digital from right of center for campaign professionals, political insiders, elected officials, and first-time or aspiring candidates for office. I'm your host, Dan Huber. This week, we'll talk about responding to social, Sun Tzu meets digital with competitive intelligence, and we'll go over the weekly social conversation with social listening from the Prosper Group. So let's get started with this week's weekly digital tip. Last week, we talked about mobile-friendly website testing. If you didn't get a chance to listen to that, I think it's a valuable conversation for any of you that have web properties, so go back and check that out. But this week, we're going to talk about responding on social. So, we talk a lot about the importance of being on social media, but it's a two-way street. It's not just about pushing content out, but also looking at feedback and interacting and engaging with people who are sharing and interacting with you online. And this is really where engagement comes in when we talk about engagement in digital and social media. You want to let your followers know that you're listening, paying attention to what they're posting and how they're responding to you. And you have to be aware that from time to time, you're going to run into trolls. These are people who are always going to say something negative about you. We live in the world of politics where, there's people who side with you, there's people who oppose with you or who are opposed to you. And then there's people in the middle who really want to get information on the other side. So the people who are out there who are never going to be with you, these are going to be your trolls most of the time. And, you can good-naturedly engage with them once, maybe twice. But what you really want to avoid is don't really get drugged down into a conversation with them. If people want to argue with them, let your supporters do that. But if they're going to be out there and if they're going to spew negative thoughts, negative feedback, they're just going to do that, and they can do that on their own. So make sure you know when enough is enough. And I would say once, twice max if somebody has something negative to say. But honestly, on some of these people, you can just ignore them completely. There's a good read on this from a business perspective by Jay Baer. It's called Hug Your Haters. And a lot of what he says for business really, I think, transfers well for politics. So if you want to learn more, if you're really engaged in kind of the social engagement response piece, you might want to check that out. Couple other things to think about. I've run into this a couple times on campaigns where people close to the candidate, people in the candidate's family may want to create fake accounts to engage and disagree with people online. It's a really bad idea. It's very amateur. Usually it kind of shows through when someone's a little too invested in fighting through. Sometimes you just have to have thick skin and let the people who have, negative things to say, they just let them say their negative things. So, but, on the flip side, there's going to be a lot of people out there who have positive things to say about what you're saying. And you want to be cognizant of those people and let them know that you're paying attention. This can be very simple. It's as easy as saying thank you or, appreciate you sharing that, or thanks for stopping by my event. If somebody comments on one of your posts, have somebody on your social team either like it or, give it a quick thank you, because that shows people that not only are you pushing your content out, but you're listening and paying attention to what they are engaging with, and it gives it more of a personal touch. So, one of the other things that I like doing, depending on how big a campaign or whatnot is there can be value in making it clear that your campaign is interacting with your social on your behalf. It may depend on the size, but sometimes I like to, for some of my clients or some of the projects I've worked on, sign it from Dan. It could be thanks for the feedback. Could be from staff. You could just put in parentheses staff. A lot of social media accounts these days, some of them are specifically staff manned. They're very forward about that. But if you put your name, Dan, in there, not only does it personalize it as engagement from the campaign and the organization, but it shows that it's a real person with a real name. And sometimes that goes even a little further to give a personal touch and make it a little more authentic. And, we talk about authenticity quite frequently. So definitely think about that. And, responding to social is definitely a good digital habit and something I would encourage you to do if you have the staff and resources to do that in the time. Well, I'd like to talk now a little bit about digital competitive intelligence. Digital competitive intelligence. So when we talk about politics, campaigns, movements, think about advocacy campaigns, it's really important to have a sense of not just what you're doing in your plan, but a lot of times we like to pay a lot of attention to what's the opposition doing, what are they focused on, understanding them and what's going on. In communications, oftentimes you may spend money investing in doing research on the background of your opponents, the people that you're competing against, to understand what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, how you differentiate from them, and how you succeed. And a lot of what you do in a more kind of traditional real world experience, you can also extend that in digital. And there's several ways to do that. Some are very inexpensive, very easy, and can provide value with relatively little investment. Others may be a bit more expensive, and some of it really may depend on how big of a campaign you have, what the budget is, what a lot of the things look like. But we'll talk a little bit about that. Digital is great for reaching your audience, and you can easily see what your competition's up to or not up to sometimes. There's many ways to track your competition. Some of the really basic ways to stay up to date are to sign up for your competitors' email updates. You may do this you probably don't want to do it on a campaign account, but you might do it on your personal Gmail, Yahoo, whatever it may be, Outlook.com. Some people still have Hotmail. I could go on, but you get the idea. Probably not a bad idea to be following the updates for your opponents, see what they're saying, what they might be saying about you or other competitors. Definitely worth a follow. Also worth a follow, social media. So, pay attention to what your competitors are doing on social media. I don't think there's anything wrong with using your private account as a campaign staffer to follow what's going on with an opposing campaign. Follow what they're doing on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever they are, and just to hear what they're talking about, where they're focused, what they're doing, and how that impacts decisions that are going on with communication inside your campaign, and those sort of things. Also, what content are they sharing on their website? What content are they sharing on social? It may be as simple as what news stories is your competition interested in, because that's kind of their way of driving the conversation, the message, what people should be tuned into. A couple tips and tricks. One really inexpensive way to keep track of what's going on online related to your competitors is Google Alerts. So if you go into Google News, you can search content related to a specific campaign, a candidate, an organization, and you can set up regular updates. They can be as they come. So as Google notices that they're being posted, they can be daily summaries. There's a few different options there, but that can be a really good way to follow what's going on in social with your opponents. So I would definitely take a look at that. I think that's always a good habit when you have a new campaign, is to keep track of what's going on with your competition. The other thing you can do is if you are following your competition on social media, you can set up alerts. So Twitter's really good at this. Once you follow some channel on Twitter, you can set up a notification on your phone. So it'll pop up an alert on your smartphone. You can see what was said or tweeted or whatever it may be. And, sometimes it's may not be that interesting, but other times it may give you good insights to what's going on. And speaking of insights, so I don't profess to be an expert on Sun Tzu or the art of war, but one of the things that Sun Tzu said is, what is of supreme importance in war is to attack the enemy's strategy. So I do think that's something that is very relevant to today. I think it's something that often gets quoted and people think about it. And some of the people who, quite frankly, are smarter than I am, know how to take that approach and really attack their opponent's strategies, their competitors, and go after what they're doing. And I think competitive intelligence can be really helpful with this because it helps you understand in real time what your opponent's doing, which I also believe helps you better anticipate what's going on. So, of course, there's a few tools you can use to go a little bit deeper into competitive intelligence. There's specific intelligence tools that are out there. There's social listening tools, which we have one we use for some of our clients. If you're interested, we would be happy to talk to you about that. And the added value there is you're not just paying attention to the conversation as it comes directly from a candidate or a campaign in social media, but the broader conversation that's occurring around the campaign, the competition. And, that can give you a little more insights into how the general public's responding to things, what the perception is, and maybe even how the media is talking about it. So that's always something to think about looking into. And that becomes particularly important for larger scale campaigns. If there's anybody that's paying attention to a local city council race in a county that has a relatively small population, you're probably not going to see a lot of value out of that. But, if you're running for governor, if you are running for United States Senate, or you're in a targeted House race, there may be a lot of conversation going on that might be valuable in knowing. Particularly if you're an elected official, you're an incumbent, and, there's things that are going on that, there's criticism, but you're trying to understand what the general response or perception of that is. Social listening can be really valuable in that area. So we have a lot of experts on our team who can really help you understand that better. And if that's something you're interested in, I definitely recommend that. Another tool that I think is a really good intelligence tool are tracking tools. So there's a good one out there called Pundit Analytics. Our friend Eric Wilson over at Pundit Analytics can talk about that if you're interested. They, I know, look at kind of tracking what's going on with your competitors' email lists, as well as changes that are occurring in websites. So it can at times be difficult to follow websites and see what's changing and going from one time to the next. I do think there's a couple tools that are out there to do that too that I've used over the years. If you're interested in that, I would just search for website change tracking tools and see what comes up there. I don't have any that I would specifically endorse or recommend. But really, the more you know, the better you can anticipate your competition. And hearkening back to that conversation about Sun Tzu, the art of war, anticipation can allow you to attack at your competitor's strategy. And once you do that, then you have a real advantage if what their strategy is not being effective anymore. Like I said, I'm not the Sun Tzu expert, but transitioning back from Sun Tzu to the social listening, we'll get into our weekly update. Every week, PG sends out the AM rundown Monday through Friday. And it's powered by social listening from the Prosper Group. If you're interested, you can get that daily by going to prospergroupcorp.com/AM rundown. It's packed with your daily summary, social trends and politics, and a digital best practice. All right. Well, looking at the conversation tracking for the past week, the conversation around filibuster is one that we continue to keep our ears to the ground on. It's up 114% this week. Conversations about 82.2 thousand tweets online. Part of that relates to passages or passing legislation from the House, as well as the discussion around HR 4 and the big push from the left there. There seems to be a focus on a very scorched earth strategy or preference towards that from the progressive side of the Democrat Party. So that's interesting to watch. Next up, gas prices. This conversation went down a little bit this week, and that doesn't seem too surprising given that given that the price of gas went down slightly, just under 3 cents this week. And really, I think with the conversation around what's going on in Afghanistan, that's probably not a huge focus either. That Afghanistan is probably a little more top of mind with folks who may be thinking about that right now. And, just not a big push for people to go out and be in their car this week, which as we approach Labor Day weekend, maybe that changes a little bit, and it'll be interesting to watch. The border crisis, again, that conversation's down 53% week over week. I attribute that also to a lot more of a focus around some of these other conversations, including Afghanistan's. Infrastructure is up 3%, and I attribute that to the conversation around the House passing the $3.5 trillion budget framework this week and the relationship of the infrastructure bill to that. And then Afghanistan is down 46% week over week this week. That seems pretty sizable, and it is, but important to note that there's still 8.3 million tweets in the conversation out there. So it was just so significant last week. And now that, it has a little staying power, it's just not as big as it was when it first broke out. So that's the roundup and social listening this week. If you have any suggestions or anything that you're particularly interested in us adding or questions you want answers to in this portion of the week in review, let me know. Shoot me an email, send us a message through social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it may be, and we'll see what we can do about that. Well, again, if you're interested in signing up to receive the AM Rundown from the Prosper Group, go to prospergroupcorp.com/AM Rundown. And that's going to be it for this week. We've looked back at digital competitive intelligence. We talked a little bit about responding to social online, and we did our weekly check-in of what's going on in social listening. So we'll be back next week. Thank you for your time. And as always, thanks for listening to the Prosper Group Week in Review.
You can find our Prosper Group Week in Review podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
If you like the show, please subscribe and share.